The Bear Essentials podcast gives older bears a place to gather for real talk regarding topics and issues that they can relate to. Here at The Bear Essentials, we aren't just having conversations. We are looking to provide actionable intelligence through real-life experience and expertise of our guests. Our mission is to build a strong community that elevates and motivates people to go beyond their limiting beliefs by helping them realize that getting older is not an excuse to hibernate on their goals, but a reason to work harder.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I am your host, Charles Wallace. In today's episode, I speak with Craig Stanland, the Reinvention architect. Craig is a best-selling author of the book Blank Canvas. He has also recently done a TED Talk, which I highly recommend. Craig has a comeback story of sorts. Unfortunately, Craig committed fraud, ended up in federal prison, and there were some dark days where Craig even contemplated suicide. Craig has rebounded from his past, and he is doing things now in his future as far as helping others reinvent themselves and helping people find meaning in their lives. I highly recommend that you check out Craig's TED Talk, take a look at his book, Blank Canvas, and please stay tuned for my interview here with Craig Stanland, the Reinvention architect. Hey, Craig, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. How are you today?
Charles, I am doing wonderfully, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today. I know that we've chatted back and forth on LinkedIn, and I think we're going to have an incredible conversation today.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it also. I enjoy your content on LinkedIn, which I'm sure we'll get into. And, it's been, I know we had this scheduled out for a bit, so it's been on the calendar popping up, and I've been excited about it. So, Craig, for those who haven't had the pleasure of getting to know you via LinkedIn or other social media, could you give a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. So my name is Craig Stanland. I live in Connecticut, and I am a reinvention architect and mindset coach, a TEDx and keynote speaker, and the best-selling author of Blank Canvas, How I Reinvented My Life After Prison.
Yeah, Craig, even your intro, you just touched on so many things that I want to get into. So I'm really excited. So, Craig, I wanted to start with this. I come across you via LinkedIn, and I just want to paint this picture for the audience. Craig is one of the most well-written, well-spoken content creators that I've come across on social media. And the reason I bring that up is this is where Craig is now. This is who Craig is now. So Craig's had some ups and downs that we'll get into, but I want to kind of go back because I think for all of us, who we are now, it's not who we were, and it's not who we're going to be. So can you take us back a little bit to your a few years back and some of your successes that led to some of your, I'll say, failures that have led to now who you are today?
Absolutely. First off, I want to thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. That means a tremendous amount to me. So I think the best way to approach this is to jump into our time machine DeLorean and go back to September 30th, 2013. On September 30th, 2013, I was a successful executive account manager for a technology firm. I was selling all the stuff that makes the internet work into the largest financial institutions in the world. I owned 4 homes. I drove the nice cars. I wore 5-figure watches. I had VIP status at some of the finest restaurants in Greenwich, Connecticut. And if you're not familiar with Greenwich, it's one of the wealthiest towns in the country. I had what most people would consider was it all. And then on October 1st, 2013, I'll set the stage. I had just started a new job. I was there for about 2 weeks, and I walk into my office in Midtown Manhattan, and I'm setting up my desk for the day. I put my laptop down, I put my notebook down, and I put my phone down, and I noticed that there is one missed call and a voicemail. And I said, wow, that's really so strange. Who could be calling me at 8:45 on a Tuesday morning? And I put the phone to my ear, and this is what I heard. Mr. Stanland, this is Special Agent McTiernan with the FBI. We are at your residence and have a warrant for your arrest. You need to call us and come home immediately, or we will issue a warrant with the federal marshals. October 1st, 2013 is the day I lost everything.
Wow. That's actually really, really scary. Like, I know some of your story, right? But when you just lay it out with those details, in my mind, I can't even imagine getting a call like that. So how do you react? What do you do? What happens next?
So it is just an avalanche of emotions all at once. It felt like all oxygen in the room vanished. I was having difficulty breathing. My heart and stomach fell the 37 floors that I had just come up. And this is going to sound so weird, but I thought that voice message was broadcast to the entire office. All my new colleagues, I thought, knew I was wanted by the FBI. And amid all of that inner turmoil and angst and panic, my heart spoke and it just said, "I told you so." And it was just such a devastating blow to have that. And now I had to figure out, how do I get out of the office I just walked into to start my day? And I just lied and said I have a meeting, and skated out and made my way. I lived in Connecticut. I was about an hour outside of the city, and I made that long, terrifying drive home.
So sounds like you knew why. You knew. Were you somewhat expecting it?
So here's the interesting thing. I knew, and I'll rewind, when I first started formulating the fraud, it took months for me to put the puzzle pieces together. I look like Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. I had Post-it notes everywhere. I had random notes written everywhere. I mean, I look like a lunatic. And it took months to put it together. And the day that I actually did, my fraud required that I, hit the send button on an email to kick it off. And before I hit the send button, as I'm hovering the cursor over that send button, my heart spoke and said, "Stop, don't do this. This is not the way." So I knew what I was doing was wrong. I did not understand the severity of it, that the FBI would have been calling me, if that makes sense. I knew ethically, morally, completely wrong. I didn't know. I was charged with 1 count of mail fraud. I'd never heard that term before. I didn't know what the heck mail fraud was, but I knew what I was doing was wrong. And I also knew my time was coming, in a sense.
Wow. So Craig, I'm sure you knew. You say it was wrong. I guess as far as family, friends, right? Is it pretty much you're the only one that knows at that point? Or you knew you were doing something wrong, but I'm assuming, speak to anybody else. Did you let anybody else in on what you were doing?
So I was married at the time, and I didn't fill my wife in with any of the details. She knew I was up to something. And I said, "It's fine. Stop it. Don't worry about it." I told some of my family that I had this new business venture that was going great. Yeah. And really what I was doing was lying to everybody. Yeah, I told my accountant about it. And he even said, and this is kind of interesting, I mean, talk about like massive red flag. He goes, "Something doesn't sound right about that." And I said, "No, you just don't understand." And that was the whole thing with everybody. "No, you just don't understand. You don't get it." Quite frankly, I'm smarter than everybody. I mean, that's really a level of arrogance that I had in doing this. So it was just lying to myself and all of those around me.
So that drive home, you say, takes an hour. What's that conversation with you yourself like on that drive home?
Great question. And it actually just speaks to some of that arrogance that I exhibited and nobody understands. I said to myself in pure denial, "I will sit down. We'll sort it out. I can talk my way out of this." The FBI doesn't come and raid your home to have a conversation over tea. They're coming for a very legitimate reason. And that's what I was thinking. I think I knew I was full of crap, but that's what I was trying to tell myself. I'm going to get through it. I'm going to be okay. But I knew deep down that I wasn't going to be. It was just one of the scariest drives I've ever had to make. And when I actually approach my home. I lived in a gated community, and I go through the gates and I take the right-hand turn down the hill. And that's when it comes into view. There are about 15 law enforcement vehicles there, FBI, local police. There was something that looked almost like a SWAT truck was there. All the blue jackets with the yellow lettering that say FBI on it. And they saw my car. They knew what I drove. And so they saw it and they waved me, controlled me with their bodies into what wasn't even a real parking spot. And they controlled my movement out of the car. And that's, when they frisked me and pulled the handcuffs out. And I said, please don't cuff me. Look at me. I'm not a threat for anybody who's listening. I'm 5'4". At the time I weighed 140 pounds. I'm not a large individual. So I said, I'm not a threat. Look at me. It's procedure. There's no way around it. Turn around. And those cuffs went on, and they were colder and heavier than I expected. And there's such a finality to the sound of handcuffs going around one's wrist that it's helplessness and hopelessness just entered my bloodstream.
Was your wife home?
So my wife is the one who opened the door to 15 agents with guns pointed at her face.
Wow.
Yeah, that was, I can't imagine the sheer terror of, they probably arrived at around 8:30 in the morning, knock on the door. Our dog started barking, running to the door like she always did. And, that's what you open the door to, is an army pointing guns at you.
So as they're taking you away, does she say anything?
They wouldn't allow us to see each other. She stayed inside and I was outside, and they would not allow us to converse. Well, the FBI wanted to confirm that there was no conspiracy.
Makes sense. So, okay, so that happens now. First time you do get a chance to speak to her, what is that conversation like?
So I will rewind. On the drive home, I called her
to
say what's happening. And actually that's when she picked up the phone, she said, Craig, what's happening? And I couldn't give her an answer. And she didn't feel free to communicate because she was surrounded by agents going through our home. The first time we spoke after that was when she came to my arraignment, and she and my father co-signed my bail. And that was the long drive home from there to have that conversation. And she was filled with terror, betrayal, fear, and just anger. You told me what you were doing was okay. You lied to me. What happens now? Just uncertainty. It's being arrested by the FBI was the creation of the most uncertainty I've ever experienced in my life. And the same was true for her.
Wow. Again, I've known some of this, obviously. But hearing you walk through it really, it almost puts me there. I hope it does the same for the audience, because it's just listening to you speak about it is terrifying. But I'll say this, hearing about that and hearing some of that and knowing where you are now, I think it gives me even newfound respect for what you've been able to accomplish. So I want to get more into what happened after the arrest, and I'll call it somewhat, as I've heard your TED Talk, which again, if anybody hasn't, please check out Craig's Stanland's TED Talk. Very poignant, and I was moved by it. So I hope everybody takes a listen to that. Before we get into more of that, though, I want to take a quick break, Craig. Here's a message from ngbn.tv. Be right back.
Hey, Charles, I just wanted to welcome you and all the Bear Essential listeners and watchers to ngbn.tv. My name is Chris Rubio, and I'm the host of The Rubio Method. We are a show about men's mental health that comes out every other Wednesday. Our latest episode just came out today, June 22nd. Then we'll have one in another 2 weeks. We already have 9 episodes out with myself and my co-host, Nick Monahan. We navigate the zone of men turning into middle age and going through health crises, whether it's mental, physical, and we have a good time while doing it. We tell a lot of funny stories. We have great interviews and guests, and it's just an all-around good time for about a half an hour to 45 minutes. So make sure you check out the Rubio Method as well on ngbn.tv, YouTube, Spotify, Google, and Amazon podcasts. And once again, from the Rubio Method to the Bare Essentials, welcome to ngbn.tv.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm here with Craig Stanland, the Reinvention architect. So, Craig, we left off about, you had just been let out on bail. I don't want to go into too much more about, obviously things happen. You end up in federal prison. I want to start to get into that because based on your TED Talk, some of that to me was some of the most vulnerable, poignant, commentary I could listen to another human being give. So could you talk a little bit about that moment when you talked about in the TED Talk in prison, when you were contemplating and envisioning your own suicide?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think these are, and thank you for bringing this up, because I think these are extremely important conversations to have, because there is a stigma around suicide and it is usually swept under the carpet. So the more that we have these open conversations and these open dialogues about it, it normalizes it and allows others who are in that dark place, A, to know they're not alone, and B, to know that it's safe to talk about it. And so I just wanted to preface it with that, and thank you for bringing that up. So when I was in prison, I had started meditating, and it was something I've always wanted to do, but I always said I didn't have the time, during my corporate life. And during one meditation, my brain conjured up this short film of what my own suicide would look like. And it was extremely graphic. It was in one of the basements of one of the homes I owned. It was with a pistol in my mouth. And I won't go too much further into the details. If you want to hear it, you can listen to my TED Talk, but I don't think we don't need to do that right now. And it was a short film, but it was very visceral and raw and powerful. And so I did what anybody would do if their brain showed them that. I waved it off. I said, obviously I don't want to think about that. And because I was so consumed with shame for the choices that I made, my fraud required thousands of choices to perpetuate it over the course of 10 and a half months. And every single time that I made one of those choices, it was in the face of my heart saying, stop, don't do this. This is not the way. So violating that voice, violating the trust in my marriage, violating the trust with my family, destroying my life was so all-consuming with shame that my brain would not let that short film go. Started playing it a little bit more, then a little bit more, then a little bit more. It then played that short film of my suicide every second of every day on a perpetual loop for 4 months straight. It was to the point where I could feel the gun going into my mouth. I could actually taste the steel and feel the coolness of it. I could feel the bullet enter and exit. And it got to the point that I had to make that stop. It was driving me insane. It was driving me absolutely crazy. And I would go to sleep at night, not a religious man whatsoever, but I would pray to anybody who would listen to kill me in my sleep. And every single morning when I awoke, I was disappointed at the light of a new day. So that's when I started to plan how I would kill myself. And my resources in prison were extremely limited. And I was having difficulty figuring it out. And now all of a sudden the shame comes in of I'm a coward who can't figure out how to kill himself. It's just this shame cycle. And then one day, it was a Wednesday in the afternoon, probably around 2-ish, I checked my email. We do have email in prison. So I check it, and it's an email from my best friend of over 30 years. His name is Sean. All it said was, hey man, can I come for a visit this weekend? And this wave of relief came over me, because for that 4 months that I was bottling up this vision of my own suicide, I couldn't share that with anybody. Because if you mention suicide in prison, they lock you in solitary confinement. And I was already alone at rock bottom with the man who was responsible for all of this. And I hated and despised that man. The idea of being locked in solitary with him was too frightening. So I couldn't share it over email. Emails are recorded or monitored. Phone calls recorded and monitored. Couldn't tell any of my friends in prison. I met some of the nicest people you could imagine, but they would have concern for me and they would tell a guard. So I bottled it up. But now Sean's coming and I know I can share with him. I know that the visiting room's not monitored. I can get this demon out of me. It seems to take forever for Saturday to arrive. It finally does. And Sean buys some food from the vending machine for us because I'm not allowed to touch money because that means we're going to escape. So I have to, say A13, B12. You get our food and we sit down. And Charles, I can't tell you how excited I am to get this out of me, like this pent up energy. It was a club soda bottle walking around with the cap on tight for 4 months. And I'm just ready to explode. And before I can utter a word, Sean starts to speak. He's getting a divorce. His life is a mess. He's got money issues. He's got work issues. There's a sadness in my friend's voice and in his eyes that in our 30 plus years of friendship, I've never seen or heard. And it was at that moment that if October 1st was the day that my life changed, Sean's visit is the second day that my life changed. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't all the things that I thought made me me. I had worth outside of my cars, outside of my watches, outside of my career. I was a friend and nothing more. And it literally shifted my entire perspective. And that's the day I started rebuilding and reinventing my life. And something I think that's so important to share is I never told Sean how I was feeling because I didn't have to. That alone undid those months of damage to understand I had that sense of worth. It was so powerful. It wasn't until I wrote my book and I wanted to share the chapter with Sean to say, hey, are you okay with me sharing this? That he found out years later. He had no idea the impact, the utter life-changing impact that he had on me.
That's amazing to me because, I think about this a lot all the time. And it was, obviously way different circumstances, but even for me, right? One of the reasons I even decided to start this podcast was I was like, you know what? Maybe I can touch somebody or impact somebody in a, in a positive way. And I think that there's too many times where we get so self-consumed, right? We don't even realize that the people in our lives, we're here as much for them and maybe even more than we're here for ourselves. And again, that's what really had me, a lot of the things that you share on social media is very, again, poignant, and it's geared that way. And it does. I mean, I want to tell you this. It does. I read it every day when you post, and it helps me because you usually will add perspective to some of the things I'm thinking about that will actually maybe open my mind and allow me to think about it differently. So, well, I'm thankful that visit happened because I think, especially now, this version of Craig is one of those people who I like to say he makes others better. So you eventually get out, you write your book. Let's talk about your book and a little bit about what you're doing now and kind of your purpose and what you're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. So we can dovetail this all in. Thank you for the kind words. And my purpose, actually, you just said it, and I don't even think you realized it. So I'm going to rewind about writing the book. I started when I was in prison. I started writing. We had those black and white composition notebooks. Remember those from school? I was able to buy that from commissary. I had my pen, and I was writing about these things that had just happened. My wife telling me that she was leaving me and that I was getting divorced, about getting arrested by the FBI, that I'm financially ruined, writing about these things that were so fresh that it was the equivalent of, pouring bleach on an open wound. I mean, every single word I wrote hurt like hell. It was absolute insanity. And so one day I'm sitting in the prison library, just feeling all of this pain, torturing myself with all this crap. And I go, why the hell am I doing this? what is the purpose of doing this? I don't know what I'm doing. I've never written a book before. I don't know how to get a book published. Nobody's going to publish this thing. Nobody's going to read this thing. I'm torturing myself when I'm already in prison. This is stupid. Why am I doing this? And I threw my pen in disgust. And that heart that spoke, that said, stop, don't do this. This is not the way. That said, I told you so. It spoke again. And this time it was not going to be ignored. It spoke with such confidence and in such a deliberate tone. And it wasn't loud. It was almost a whisper, but it was a whisper that made me listen. And I flipped to a blank page and I wrote the answer. And this is my purpose. And this is what fuels me. And my heart said, to help one person. And that's it.
Listen, you just kind of, the hair on my arm stood up. I'm going to tell you why. Because you've probably seen I'm involved with NGBN, and our kind of mission and purpose is to help other men. Our kind of founder leader, I did an interview with Ian Hill, and we literally had a conversation, and he said to me, what is your purpose with the podcast? What do you want to do? And my answer was, I want to reach people. And he said, he forced me. What does that mean? And then he said to me, similar to what you just said, he said, you know what the goal is, Charles? It's to reach one. One's the number. So the fact that you have come out and said this now too, it's really interesting. And God, Craig, it just, again, and the title of your book too, Blank Canvas. I'm somewhat of an amateur artist, and I always think about when I look at the paper or the canvas, if I want to make something, right? I'm always just thinking like, wow, I have all these options to do whatever the hell I want. And I think you writing that book and doing what you're doing now is like, you just took it to another level, man. And I want to congratulate you on it all, man, because I really think that you took a situation that, let's be honest, I think it would have broken, and it has broken many, many people. And the fact that you didn't just recover from it, you beat the hell out of it, man. And good for you. So the book happens, you write this book, and based on everything I can see, definitely, and I'm not going to lie, I have not read the book yet. It is on my list, but from everything I can see, it's gotten great feedback. Any thoughts on writing a follow-up?
Oh yeah, I'm working on it right now. I love the one-on-one work that I do with my clients. That is just such a passion of mine. I love getting in front of an audience and speaking. I love those things. But what fuels those things, what makes me excel at those things, is writing. I write 2 hours every single day. It is non-negotiable. I write when I'm on vacation. Fortunately, my girlfriend sleeps in and I get up around 5:30. So we were in Maine a couple of weeks ago for vacation. She knows what I do. I get up, I go down, I'm sitting overlooking the water, and I type. That's what I do. I've written over 22 million words in the past 6 years, which is like almost 400 books. Most of it's crap, but that's what makes me excel at the work that I do, because it's me processing my thoughts. It's me going to those places. So I love the act of writing. The second book is in the works. I thought, honestly, I thought I was going to learn a little bit from my first book and, my process, because it took 6 years from first word written to getting that thing published, and about 1 million words written to whittle down to those 52,000. And I was like, I'm going to be a little more targeted on this one. No, my process is just to write a tremendous amount in no particular order, to throw it all up against the wall and go, I think this goes here. I think this goes here, and put it together. But I honor that process and I love it. I think you can tell when I talk about writing, I talk about writing all day long. It lights me up. And I think that's how, with the work that I do now and helping that one person is to find that thing that somebody else gets that excited about, the way I talk about writing. That writing is my calling. And I think I believe we all have a calling. And when we connect with that, we ultimately create in our lives what we want more than anything, which is peace and freedom.
Well, Craig, I can say this, and for anybody who watches this, listens to it, and you hear the way Craig speaks about his writing, I can 100% tell because Craig, and I said it in the beginning, your posts, your content on social media is so well thought out, so well spoken and translated into written word. It is amazing. I enjoy reading it. It's insightful. It sparks new thoughts. And listen, I say to anybody, please read the book. Please seek out Craig. But definitely just check out his LinkedIn and his social media too. So, Craig, I want to give you a chance now to kind of just let people know if they want to get in touch with you, how they can get in touch with you and how you can help them.
Absolutely. So we'll go through how you can get in touch with me. CraigStanland.com, great place to start. My website, as you mentioned, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn 7 days a week. I'm also on Instagram under Craig_Stanland. If you want to check out my book, it is Blank Canvas, How I Reinvented My Life After Prison. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the major distributors. And my TED Talk, How I Learned My Greatest Worth in Federal Prison. It's 16 minutes long and will give you, I think, a really good insight into my story and some of the lessons learned. In regards to how I can help people, I work with two very distinct groups of people, and I love working with both of these groups. Number one is people who are going through or have been through the justice system, who, have a similar story to my own and need to reinvent themselves from scratch because they've lost everything. The second group of people that I work with are what I call pre-choice Craig. They are extremely successful. They've climbed the top of their professional mountain only to find that all the things that they were promised are not there. There's no happiness. There's no joy. There's no fulfillment. And they're lost and confused and feel betrayed. What the hell? I did all the things that I was supposed to do. I followed all the shoulds and expectations. Why do I feel this way? And I work with them to connect with their calling so they can climb a different mountain and find all of the things that they want. Because I really believe as we enter the second half of our lives. So I turned 49 on August 5th. So, I'm kind of in that back nine of my life. And I know from my experience, from my clients, we want meaning. Viktor Frankl said we have a will to meaning. It is that strong and inherent in us. We want purpose. We want fulfillment. And ultimately, those lead to what I believe we desire more than anything is that inner peace and that emotional freedom. So what I do is help people write their extraordinary second half of their life story.
Yeah, well, Craig, I just wanted to end with this. And I would say this. I think the name you've chosen, the Reinvention Architect, is perfect. And what I like to say to people is when you hear Craig's story, other people's stories, not just Craig, other people, seek out these stories. They're there and they're helpful. And they all will tell you this. It's not hopeless. And Craig is a great example that reinvention is possible. And if it's something you need, you should pursue it. So, Craig, on that note, I will make sure to have links in the podcast notes to make sure people easily can get a hold of you. And like I said, Craig is one of those people I put on that list. He's the kind of person that makes us want to be better. So seek him out. Craig, thank you so much for this.
Charles, thank you for having me on. And if I could take just a moment to acknowledge you for having this platform, for having people on to share their stories, because that's how we move the needle forward as a society. So thank you for what you do.
Craig, I appreciate that. That means the world to me. So thank you very much. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.